Hello everybody and welcome to Dreams Gaming's franchise mode. My name's Shane. You also might know me as Private Penne, that's my gamer tag, and in ESHL I am Donnie Drives the Car. If you've seen our ESHL Road to Division 1, I play center. So today we're going to start a franchise mode. I'm picking the Boston Bruins because that's my favorite team, and it's the team I'm most familiar with. I'll be able to have a knowledge of the roster and the prospects, and it'll just be easier for me to go through and as I try out this franchise mode. It's something new for me. First time I've ever done this before. So we're gonna use the Bruins. I'm not doing owner mode. I don't like messing with the budgets and the revenues and worrying about the stadium and upgrades and maintenance. I don't think that really contributes much to the series, anyways. More of a GM mode guy. Back when it used to be GM mode. And we're gonna turn off morale meetings. I don't think that really affects much. And assistant coach, I want to mess with my own lines. So one of the things that we're going to be focusing on in this franchise mode is sort of a realistic aspect to it, in that I'm not going to cheat the system. I'm not going to do the 15% trick when it comes to re-signing your players, where you can just take 15% off the money they're asking for and they'll re-sign automatically. But I will do sort of a hometown discount thing for our franchise players that have been with us for a while. Say if we're re-signing somebody like Patrice Bergeron, he's not going to have to sign for that full value, just due to how important he is to the community and Boston as a whole and how much he loves being in Boston. We're just going to assume that for players down the road we get a situation, but we won't take off the full 15%. We'll just do a little bit of a discount. I mean, it's just too easy to sign everybody to 15% and just call it a day. You'd have a lot of really good players for really cheap. So one thing I'm going to do is turn the injuries off, just due to the fact that you can go in and spend 30 minutes setting the line, set them up perfectly, and then one guy gets injured, misses a game, you have to go in and redo them twice in the matter of like 3 days within the simulation. I don't want to be doing that. It's just a waste of my time. And but I could turn it back on in the future, put it on a low rate, but that's something right now I don't really want to mess with. And authentic cap penalties, yeah, the Bruins have a little bit of effect from a buyout. And difficulty, I don't think it matters, but I'm put it on superstar. Authentic draft pick ownership, with the Bruins we do not have our second, third, or fifth pick in 2017. So we're going to leave that on, make it a little bit harder for us, and we're going to turn the trade difficulty to hard, once again, just to make it a little bit harder on me. And so yeah, like I said, I'm trying to make it add some sort of difficulty to it, but at the same time I'm still learning the ropes of doing YouTube franchise modes. I mean, I've done my fair share of them offline, but just to share with you guys, I'm going to have a little bit of a learning curve here. And we'll get that started. Keep salary cap on, yeah. So one of the things I want to discuss is I'm using EA's rosters. I could go through and create a bunch of players and fine-tune everyone's roster and try to make it as realistic as possible, but at this stage in NHL 17, like by the time I finished and made my rosters, NHL 18 would be coming out. So I'm going to wait to do that for NHL 18. There's only a couple months left until that game comes out. So I'm using strictly the EA rosters, the most recent ones, with a couple of minor exceptions, and those are Bruins only. I just changed 3 potentials for players just based on what they did this season with the Bruins. And first one you saw right there, David Pastrnak. Let's go to forwards. David Pastrnak. I made him a high top 6 potential. He played first line minutes. He scored upwards of 60 points, and he even missed a few games. But I didn't change his overall. I left him at 85 overall, even though he's a top line right winger. Probably was in contention for an all-star. He was listed as a medium top 6, and with that would have had his trade value somewhere around like a quarter of a bar or even less. And if I make him a high top 6, his trade value is up there with the guys like Marchand and Bergeron, where it belongs. And it's also, hopefully, he'll develop into a solid top line guy like he showed that he was this year in the NHL. Another player potential I changed was Brandon Carlo. I changed him from a low top 4D to a medium top 4D. But still, once again, I did not change any of his stats or his attributes. He's still an 81 overall, despite playing a full season with a top pairing with Zdeno Chara. So he definitely showed that he has top pairing potential. So I moved him up to a medium top 4, but I left him in the 81. So that's going to hurt us a little bit compared to the Boston Bruins in real life. There's several occasions where the Bruins in real life outperformed their NHL 17 roster, like attributes or overalls or potentials. So one more player I changed was a guy that's in the system. He's way down here, 67 overall, I think. Let's find him. DeBrusque, right here, 66 overall, age 19. He's listed as a low top 6 forward on EA's roster, so I changed him to a medium top 6 just based on his performance in the AHL this season and currently in the AHL playoffs. I think he definitely has potential, and we might actually see him on the Boston Bruins in the 2017-18 season. They might throw him into that top 6 role, get him some time in the NHL. So another thing with using EA's rosters, other than there being just a bunch of players that are underrated or overrated, is that college players get left out completely. Obviously, EA can't put college players in the game due to the NCAA rules. And that kind of hurts the Bruins in that the Bruins have drafted heavily from the NCAA recently, and I shouldn't have left the contracts. Towards the end of the season, they saw NHL debuts from both Charlie McAvoy and Jakob Forsbacher-Karlsson, who both have been added to the game in EA's most recent update. Let me just find these players for you real quick. Forsbacher-Karlsson debuted in the very last game of the regular season, so he was added to the game. He's a medium top 9, 19 years old, and we'll go to Charlie McAvoy as I'm getting there. We can see that other teams that have drafted college prospects recently that haven't signed and played an NHL game yet, like I believe Clayton Keller's in the game and Tyson Yost, but if teams have drafted college players to the NHL and they haven't played in the NHL yet, they will not be in the game. I could go through and add them all, but like I said earlier, I'll do that for NHL 18, just due to NHL 17. It's getting old, and it's about time for a new game. So here we see Charlie McAvoy. He made his debut in the playoffs, so he could in the NHL playoffs, so he can get here into the game. EA has him on the rosters. Medium elite potential, age 18. So there'll be NHL teams. Your favorite team might be missing a top prospect, and that sucks. But the Bruins are also missing some top prospects. And the Hobey Baker finalist Anders Bjork from Notre Dame, he's not in the game yet. He's currently playing in the IHF World Championships, but still hasn't signed his NHL contract and hasn't played an NHL game yet. So hopefully we'll see him in NHL 18, and I don't have him created, so that's something that we're missing out, as well as Trent Frederick, who was a first-round draft pick in the 2016 NHL draft. We don't have him in the game, so it's like the Bruins missed out on a first-round pick from last year. And other teams will have that too, like the St. Louis Blues are missing their first-round pick from last year. So that's the thing that you're going to see throughout this, is there's not going to be those college prospects there. And I feel like that hurts the Bruins as much as anybody, so that's essentially another restriction I'm placing on myself. So going back to like not cheating the system, I'm gonna try to like avoid as much as possible, like just getting rid of contracts again, like getting rid of bad contracts and getting rid of players just to like pick up a bunch of draft picks, or trying to max out the draft picks I can get from a trade. I'll just do trades that make sense, and I won't hoard draft picks. Like, if we go here to our forwards, the Bruins have a couple of really bad contracts with Matt Bolesky and Jimmy Hayes. Like Matt Bolesky, he's an 83 overall in the game, and he's signed for 4 years at $3.8 million. So he's got it's a third line guy that's locked up long term for almost $4 million. I could easily trade him for like a third to somebody and offload that contract for free, but that's not going to happen in real life. You would need to trade Matt Bolesky with a third to get like nothing, and so that's not really realistic. Excuse me, and that's not what I want to do with this series. And the same thing with Jimmy Hayes. He's signed for 2 years at $2.3 million. No team's going to want that contract, especially they're not going to pay in prospects or picks to get that contract. They're going to have to be paid to take the contract. So I'm not just going to trade those guys away for picks. I'm going to have to come up with a more creative solution in doing that. I might just end up holding on to them for till their contracts expire. Matt Bolesky, you can throw him on the third line in a third line checking role. He's got that good physical category, but I'm not just going to be able to. I'm not going to cheat the system and just get rid of him for free, basically. Another thing I'm not going to do is when it comes to draft day after the lottery, if a team that had like the 14th best odds to win the lottery actually wins the lottery, and you go to draft day but you don't enter the draft, you can still make trades before the draft. And if you try to trade with that team, their trade value for that pick will still be as if it were the 14th pick in the draft as opposed to the first. So you could get it for half price essentially and get the number 1 overall pick if that team was to win the lottery. And I'm not going to cheat and do that. I'm going to try to keep it. I'm not going to cheat the system, make it really easy on myself. I want this to be somewhat of a challenge like I was talking about earlier. So we're going to look a little bit at where we stand, the Bruins, in terms of the players that we have on our roster, and we're going to look a little bit at their contracts. So these top 4 guys, this is the Bruins core pretty much. We got Bergeron, Backes, Krejci, and Marchand. All of them are high 20s, low 30s in age, and they're all signed for at least 4 years at over $6 million apiece. And the problem here is the Bruins are kind of like a we could easily contend, but at the same time we could easily miss the playoffs type team, and that's something that I've seen in Sims, is that sometimes if the first year the Bruins can win the Stanley Cup, at the same time they can easily just miss the playoffs. And with this core, you don't want to miss the playoffs. You don't want to be using those years and all that money and all that trade value. You don't want to get to the point where they start regressing. But at the same time, like past them, outside of them, there's not a whole lot going on as in terms of like top end NHL talent, except for like David Pastrnak and to an even lesser extent Ryan Spooner. So both of those guys are in the last year of their RFA deals. We could easily just re-sign them next year, depending on our cap situation, or we could let them go to RFA, or we could trade somebody's rights, or we could trade somebody at the deadline. We just have a lot of options, and that's something that's cool about doing the Bruins, is that if you do a title contender, like say you do the Penguins, you're gonna be contending for the Cup year 1 and years 1 through 5, and you're gonna be doing the same thing. You're gonna be trading picks and prospects for NHL ready players. Or if you do the Colorado Avalanche, you're gonna be trading your old guys and bringing young guys in, bringing draft picks in, and trying to rebuild as soon as possible. With the Bruins, if you start a franchise mode, you could do either one really. And I'm gonna let that determination be made by our year 1 performance. If we miss the playoffs and it's not looking great for us, I'm gonna start trying to trade away some of these players at the top, like a Backes and a Krejci. The thing about like Bergeron and Marchand is I kind of want them to retire as Bruins, because that's what's gonna happen in real life. Like no matter the direction the team takes, if we start rebuilding, those guys aren't going anywhere. And if they do, it would be a major shock to all the fans and the fan base, and it would just create like a huge, massive problem between the Bruins front office and the fans. So I'm gonna try to keep guys like that around, and Pastrnak to a lesser extent. But outside of those guys, we got Drew Stafford, who the Bruins picked up at the trade deadline. That almost $4.5 million contract for an 84 overall does not look fantastic. Good news is last year of his deal. If we're not performing well, I could trade him at the deadline, just get something out of him, but at the same time, it's not looking like he's going to be a guy that we're going to be bringing back next year, especially for that cap number. So that's another one of those things. It depends on our performance, what we see happen to Drew Stafford. And then I talked about Bolesky and Hayes already. Those guys have really bad contracts, so we're going to have to figure out something to do with them. And at the bottom of our roster, looking at Nash, Moore, and Vetrano. Nash and Moore were great for the Bruins this year in that they as a fourth line, they outperformed the third line and even at times the second line. They played so well, and they were the second penalty kill unit behind Marchand and Bergeron. They did a fantastic job. The Bruins had one of the best penalty kills in the league throughout the regular season, and they were a big part of that. But in the game, they're really low 80s, and they can't kill penalties either. If you look at Riley Nash's defensive stat, it's 3.5 stars, and same thing with Dominic Moore. So if you go up to the top, we'll have Krejci and Backus probably as our penalty killers because they have better stats. So Nash and Moore aren't as valuable to us as they were to the Bruins in real life, but they do have the less than $1 million contracts, so they're going to be decent fourth liners for us. Probably end up letting them go when their contracts expire. And then Frank Vatrano's another prospect we have, 22 years old with a medium top 9. The thing with him is he's not really a fourth line guy. If you look at his stats, his defensive category is awful, and his offensive category is not too bad. So as it stands right now, he's our 12th forward, and that would put him on the fourth line for us, but that's not really what we want. So I might send him down to the AHL, and if we do that, we'll need to add somebody to the roster. Then looking at defense, we got all these guys signed for a pretty long time. Chara's got 2 years, age 39. He's still performing very well, so if he doesn't retire after year 1, he'll probably regress to that second pairing role, although that's his role is already listed as a top 4 D-man, but he's going to get top line minutes for us, no doubt. Fantastic defensive category. Decent offensively. Really big dude. You probably know about Chara already. I don't need to talk about him anymore. Krug. The thing with Krug is that 4 years at $5.25 million, that's not great for what he's going to do for us. He's like a guy that you'd want to put on your third pairing, just because his defense isn't fantastic, but he's great offensively. So you want to put him on like your third pairing, and then all your top penalty kill units, and your 3-on-3 and your 4-on-4. But for the money he's making, and based on what else we have on the team, he's going to be playing a much bigger role than that. So that's something we need to look at going forward, is trying to get a top 2 defenseman, left-handed defenseman. Because look down here at our 2 best defensive prospects. They're both right-handed in McAvoy and Carlo. So McQuaid and Kevin Miller, those guys, low 80s. They're as good as they're going to get. Both between $2.5 and $3 million a year for quite a long time. They're both good penalty killers, and they're going to have to play. One of them's going to have to play that second pairing role for us right now, and they'll both kill penalties. But we need long-term options there. We're going to have to find defensive prospects, maybe draft somebody year 1. And then Carlo and McAvoy, both of those guys, real young. In real life, they're playing absolutely fantastic. Carlo played that top pairing. He played on top pairing all season with Zdeno Chara. And then Charlie McAvoy played that top pairing with Chara in the playoffs. And they were both fantastic for their age, and they're both fantastic for what you'd expect out of defensemen, like 1 year from being drafted. They both definitely outperformed expectations by a long shot, and they're going to be the long-term cornerstones of our defense. Excuse me. And they're both locked up for the next 3 years on entry-level deals, which is fantastic for us. But in 3 years, we're going to be we're going to need cap space to pay those guys. And then in terms of goalies, we have Tuukka Rask and Hudobin. Rask has 4 or 5 years. That's 5 years at $7 million. So at age 29, his contract expires when he's going to be about 34. And the thing with him, it's going to be similar to Backus and Krejci. While the Bruins will probably never trade Tuukka Rask, we will look to potentially trade him if the team starts on a downward trend in a couple of years, because he has a fantastic trade value. But as it stands right now, the Bruins, we don't have really replacement in place for Tuukka Rask. We have Malcolm Subban, low elite, 22 years old at an 80 overall. But the thing with him is the max I've seen him is like 83 or 84 if he stays on the Bruins. So because we can't give him those starter minutes with Tuukka Rask on the team, because we're not going to start Subban over Rask, and we don't really want to trade Rask unless we're bad. So, and I'm definitely not trading him this early in the game, especially. So, Subban, he's going to need some fantastic growth. Maybe if we see him at 83 or 84 by the end of this year or next year, we might look to trade him and get something back for him. And then Zayden McIntyre, he tore up the AHL this year, but EA underrated him quite a lot in these rosters. He's got a low AHL starter potential at 70 overall, age 24. That's just terrible. He's completely useless for us. I probably could have messed with his overall to reflect a better representation of how good he is and how good he could be for the Bruins, but I'm just going to leave it like it is. And then we got Vladar, high backup, 6'9 overall, age 19. Hopefully we see some good development out of this guy, and he could end up being our long-term backup, or he might be like a fringe starter, end up starting a year in a goalie tandem. Who knows? We'll see. So we're going to look at defensemen. What we have here, we got Miller, Colin Miller, and Joe Morrow. Both those guys are fringe 7th D in the game, and if we end up the best, who knows what we're going to do with these guys. We could trade them, we could keep them, and then try to get them some AHL time. We could leave them in the AHL for a year and see how they develop, see if they can crack the NHL roster. But those guys are going to be wait and see guys, in my opinion. But our top prospects that we have at defense are Zaboral and Lauzon. The thing with these guys is they're both left-handed defensemen. They're both 19. They're both mid-60s. Zaboral being a medium top 4 and Lauzon medium top 6. So those guys, hopefully we see some good growth out of them, and they could end up being long-term options to crack our top 6 and see ice time for us. They could be those guys behind Torrey Krug, or they might surpass Krug. But hopefully in the future we see Krug, Zaboral, and Lauzon on our left side, on our left-handed defense, and then Carlo McAvoy as our top 2 right-handed defense. I'm going to have to figure out that third guy. But that's pretty much it for prospects. I mean, we got guys like O'Gara, Grizzlick, and Arneson that might end up cracking a top 6 role for a short amount of time, but nothing really else going on here. So that's something we're going to be looking forward to, is finding that another right-handed defenseman to go with Carlo and McAvoy. And then from a forward standpoint, I talked about DeBrusque earlier and JFK. We also have Gabriel and Senishin. I really don't know how to pronounce his name. I probably should look it up if I'm going to be doing a Bruins series, because you'll probably hear his name more than once. All 4 of these guys are 19. And 3 of them have quite a long way to go before they even sniff out an NHL role, with JFK being a 72. So if he gets really good growth this year, he might be able to crack the NHL roster next year. Most of these guys we're looking at 2 or 3 years before we even start considering them. And that's pretty much all we got from a prospect standpoint here. It'd be nice if we could see Anders Bjork and Trent Frederick on this list as well, but maybe we'll get him next year in NHL 18. Who knows? Another name to mention here, I guess, is Danton Heinen, being a 74 overall, age 21. He could crack the NHL, being a two-way forward if that defensive category gets up a little bit higher. But we'll have to wait and see on that guy. So now we're gonna be looking at potential moves to make. A big hole the Bruins have is that second line left wing. I'll show you here in rosters here in a second. That second line left wing, and the third line center. So Ryan Spooner can play either one of those roles. Doesn't have the best face-off category, but he still can play center. As I move these 3 guys down to create a little bit of cap space and get our full roster. I'll show you this right here. I don't want that. Krejci, we're going to put him on the right wing, and Drew Stafford we're going to put him on third line right wing. So Spooner can either play right here on that second line left wing. You see he's left-handed. He's got really good offensive stats. The defensive category is not terrible, but 76 faceoffs isn't great. And he can either play this second line left wing role, get him a lot more minutes, hopefully he develops his role as third scoring line. Or we could play him as this third line center, and he's not a bad third line center. Between Bolesky and Stafford. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at free agents to put in the second line left wing role, and we're going to sign Alexander Semin. The thing with Semin is he has really good offensive category, really good shot. He's a sniper, pretty good passing as well. So he should work out pretty well. I'm going to look at him first. Work out pretty well alongside Backus and Krejci. But the thing about him is his defensive category. If you look at that, 2.5 stars is not the best. And but we're going to throw him with Backus and Krejci. Both of those guys are fantastic defensively, 4.5 stars. They'll both be killing penalties for us. So hopefully Alexander Simmon can provide some scoring up there on that second line left wing. And hopefully Backus and Krejci can cover for him more so on the defensive end. But we're going to try to sign him for $3 million. And in doing this, we can send down Frank Vatrano to the AHL. And hopefully he can get some development down there. Another guy we could have looked at was James Wisniewski. He's a pretty good two-way defender. Great offensive awareness and passing, and his defensive category is not too bad. The thing about him, though, is he wants that $4.8 million. There's not really a way to carve out that much cap space easily without cheating. I don't want to trade away guys for nothing, like Bolesky. I could easily move him and sign that guy, but what we're going to do here is we're going to make a trade to kind of bolster our defense a little bit, and because currently we have an 83 and an 82 as our second line defense pairing, which is not great. That's not really what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to trade for Dennis Seidenberg. Look at Dennis Seidenberg, bring him back to Boston. 1 year, $1 million contract. That's fantastic for us. It's what we need. A cheap guy that at the end of the year, if it turns out that we're not doing too well, we can just let him go back to free agency because he's old. He's going to regress. He's not going to be sticking around with us long term. But if you look at defensive category, we can probably put him on the left side of that second pairing and throw him with a guy like Charlie McAvoy, who's more of a two-way guy. His defense is a little bit weaker, and Seidenberg kind of cover for him on that second pairing. And what we're going to trade away here is we're going to trade one of our 80 overall defensemen, because we have 8 defensemen that can play in the NHL. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So we're going to trade not Joe Moore. We're going to trade Colin Miller, low top 6D. We're going to keep Joe Moore as low top 4D. And in doing this, we can send Brandon Carlo back down to the AHL. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. We might trade somebody else. But Brandon Carlo, one of these guys is going to go down to the AHL. We might just get rid of Colin Miller or Kevin Miller or send him down to the AHL. I don't know yet, but we just have too many NHL type defensemen, so we can get rid of one of them and upgrade and turn him into somebody that can play that second line. We have too many like bottom pairing guys, so we're gonna upgrade by getting trading out Colin Miller, and that's not gonna be enough trade value. So we're gonna have to throw in somebody else, and what we're gonna do is throw in one of our medium bottom 6 guys in Peter Cehlarik. So we're going to trade both of these guys, Cehlarik and Colin Miller, for Dennis Seidenberg. And trade accepted. And what this also does is creates another roster space for us for signing Alexander Simmon. So if you saw just a second ago, we had 50 of 50 contracts. We have to send somebody down. So now we're going to have that. I have to decide on one of those guys. I'll save that for the next video. So I have to decide on which one of those guys we want to send down. And yeah, so we're near the end of the video here. What I'm going to do is see if we get Alex Simmon. See if he signs for us for that $3 million. Stupid scouting. Scouting in this game sucks. But we'll do it anyways. Why not? I mean, I've done enough of the GM modes to know who's going to be there. I just want to make sure that I have the cap space to sign Simmon again. No, 2.3 million. So we're going to get rid of a little bit of cap space. And to do that, we're going to have to send somebody down. I believe that should get the job done. We'll just send down Kevin Miller at this point. Click the wrong thing. Roster moves. We're just going to send down Kevin Miller at this point. Hopefully that gives us the cap space we need to sign Simmon. And we'll make a decision between videos of which guy we want to send down and how we want our lines to look. So I'll start the next video with our lines and our roster. But for now, we're going to see when we sign Simmon. If you guys enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. You obviously don't have to, but you can leave comments down below of constructive criticism, like what This is my first time obviously doing a franchise mode. Like I said earlier, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of freelancing it over here. So if there's something that you want to see, S. Simmons signs with us, so that's good. If there's something you want to see from me out of this series, if there's a roster move you want to see me make, if you want to see me trade for somebody or sign somebody or anything you want to see differently, please let me know. I'll take it into consideration.